one thing that needs to be said about this week's episode of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, it's that Chucky gon' sue somebody. All joking aside, this week's episode of Stardust Crusaders was pretty damn bodacious. It was a great combination of brutal, gory action and dark comedy. I loved this episode. It had great production value, a really thrilling action sequence, and it also had the character Polnareff this week having a really shitty day. He's the newest member of Jotaro's group, and he's definitely having a hard time against the stand this week, which is known as the Ebony Devil. And it's this little voodoo doll who, you know, doesn't look all that dangerous, but looks can be deceiving this week because Polnareff just gets his ass handed to him for the most part this week. But it manages to be just as funny as it is brutal at the same time, and that's something that really needs to be commended. And what I really liked about this episode is that it seemed like a great homage to the horror film series Child's Play, which is the movies about Chucky the Killer Doll. But it also reminded me of this really cheesy horror film from the 1970s called Trilogy of Terror, which is an anthology horror movie which has 3 different stories in it. And in one of the stories is this one about this little doll who comes to life. He's a little voodoo doll. He has a tiny little head, really sharp teeth, and this knife that he just runs around and cuts people's legs up with. Sounds familiar? Pretty much happens in this week's episode, but it manages to be really awesome at the same time. I actually really like how the stand user is introduced in this week's episode. When Polnareff walks into his hotel room, he notices that something is not quite right, and that's when he asks this stand user to appear, and it's this Native American guy who just walks out of the mini fridge, and he knew this because all of the beer was taken out beforehand and he didn't bother to move any of it. But this is because this guy actually wants to be attacked. It goes in line with how his stand works. So Silver Chariot just stabs this dude in the face repeatedly until he falls off a ledge, but then suddenly disappears. And that's when we learn that he's actually connected to this little voodoo doll which is in the room. And whatever damage this guy takes, he uses that to fuel the grudge of this doll, which will then attack Polnareff. And this is the part of the episode where I'm guessing the animators just got done doing a line of coke and injecting crack into their eyeballs and washing it all down with a Quaaludes colada, because everything just goes crazy at this point. This doll just starts beating the crap out of Polnareff. There's a great scene where he's fighting against the Silver Chariot, and they're making great use of the camera sweeps and how big the difference is between Silver Chariot and the Ebony Devil. You can see this thing's running around his legs, running up his shoulders and attacking him, grabbing 2 wine bottles and breaking them. Is it weird that this reminded me of the fight between Austin and Mini-Me from Goldmember? I especially like the scene where the doll somehow tricks Polnareff to go underneath the bed, where he ties him completely underneath it all, and then cuts the legs off where he ends up slamming into the floor. It's followed by a really messed up scene where this bellboy just walks into the room, and then the doll jumps on him and cuts his face off! It is so unneedlessly gory, but it manages to leave quite an impact. And in typical big battle shonen action, Polnareff is able to win at the end after the doll is trying to electrocute him by throwing booze all over the floor. He even mentions that he wishes he could take a piss while he swings his weird little puppet dick around. It's absolutely hilarious. I'm starting to like crack up just thinking about it now. But Polnareff, thanks to use of a little bit of luck and some mirrors on the ground, is able to use those to help his vision out and have the Silver Chariot stab through the Ebony Devil. And I love the scene where he takes his sword and slings him across the wall, and he just bounces all over the place right into the screen. It's a nice little effect, and then Polnareff just cuts him up. And with all of that, I was completely satisfied. I'm like, wow, that was a great episode. I cannot wait to see what's going to happen next week. Yet they still managed to include just a little bit more at the end of the episode. There's a great scene during the credits where Joseph, Joestar, and Abdul are trying to get a little more information about Dio. And we learn that Joseph has this other ability that doesn't just include cameras. He can manipulate like TVs and stuff. And he's able to look in and see what's going on with Dio and get kind of a cryptic message. And they learn that Kakyoin apparently is a traitor. I think this is bullshit, and I'm only saying that because he's focused so much on in the intro, and they already had the weird little hentai tentacle squid thing removed from his forehead, and they did mention that he might be like a Trojan horse for something else, like there might be something inside of him that's like just using his body to stay close to Jotaro and his group. and that's probably what's going down. But the scene is really great because Dio also makes an appearance where he notices that he's being watched, and he even talks to Joseph directly and then makes the TV explode right in front of them. It's a great scene, and it gives you a great to be continued with Kakyoin hanging out with Jotaro and that little girl. So, what's the rundown on this week's episode? It was awesome! The animation and the artwork, just like the rest of the series, was on point. They actually gave a lot of attention to detail in the fight scene between the Ebony Devil and Silver Chariot, especially the scenes where they're using all of the camera in a lot of interesting ways and just showing how quick these characters can move. The actual Ebony Devil himself is very unique and, like I said, is a great homage to those killer doll movies and killer puppets that we used to see in the past. And I also love the fact that they included a little bit of more stuff with Dio at the end. This was just a full package episode, and it managed to be really funny at the same time. The actual doll himself is hilarious. He's incredibly crass and says some ridiculous things. So if you're into horror movies and action scenes and anime, then this might actually be the episode for you. I implore you guys, if you have not checked out this series yet, watch it now. It is so incredibly entertaining. Watch it with friends, get pizza, get beer. This is the exact type of show for that situation because it just reeks of style. Check it out. This is a 10 out of 10 episode from me. Kick-ass episode of Stardust Crusaders. If you guys saw this week's episode of Stardust Crusaders, I would love to hear your thoughts about it. You can tell me with your comments below. It's pretty amazing. You can tell me about your favorite moments. What did you think of the fight scene between Silver Chariot and the Ebony Devil? And what's going to happen with Kakyoin? Is he really a traitor, or is there something else going on here? Remember, guys, before you leave, make sure and give this video a thumbs up. Hit the like button so you can help us out. You can also subscribe to the channel if you haven't seen all of our latest anime and manga reviews. You can check us out on Facebook. You can check us out on Twitter. All that stuff is going to be in the description box below. Check it out. I will see you next time. Super Kami Guru 9000. Out.